Hello, and thank you for joining us on the Capitol Report on NTD television. I'm your host, Steve Lance. In a bombshell decision, the Supreme Court today overturned Roe v. Wade, effectively giving the right to determine abortion back to the states. How are Americans reacting, from protesters to the president? NTD's Iris Tao brings us more.
It's official.
Constitution does not confer a right to abortion!
The Supreme Court on Friday overturned Roe v. Wade, ruling there's no longer a federal constitutional right to an abortion.
Extreme sadness for America.
Joy, just absolute joy, and God has truly blessed our country today.
Calling abortion a profound moral issue on which Americans hold sharply conflicting views, the High Court wrote in its opinion, the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion, and now authority to regulate abortion is returned to the people and their elected representatives. And Americans showing both cheers and jeers outside of the court, with some expressing fears.
I know y'all don't believe it, but birth control is definitely next.
All this is going to do is cause more negativity and more deaths within our lives between women and between children because they're not going to have a safe way to have abortion.
And others saying they see hope.
There are many couples like us that we have not been able to conceive and that we would love to have a child. So the solution is not to kill. There is many solutions. Adopt is one of those, and if they don't want them, we will take them.
And as the protests are going on right behind me, some states have already started to act.
Right after the Friday ruling, abortion bans went into immediate effect in states of Louisiana, Missouri, Kentucky, and South Dakota. At least 13 states have trigger laws to pose abortion restrictions immediately or soon following the ruling.
That's awesome. We're looking to get 12 to 15 states within like the first 24 hours to ban abortion from the moment of conception. So God bless America. This is a great day, and a lot of prayers have been answered today. It's absolutely wonderful.
Meanwhile, the president decrying the court's decision.
The court literally taking America back 150 years.
And Biden is calling for Congress to restore Roe as federal law and for Americans to vote accordingly in November.
This fall, Roe is on the ballot. Personal freedoms are on the ballot.
And Biden added that he would defend the right for women to travel to another state for an abortion, now that some states are moving to ban or restrict it. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Iris Tao, NTD News.
Earlier today, we were on Capitol Hill when the Supreme Court's official ruling came down. We spoke to Tennessee Congresswoman Diana Harshbarger to get her reaction. Congresswoman Diana Harshbarger, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, it's a great day today. I'm telling you, it's a spectacular day.
And that leads me to my first question. What does the Supreme Court's ruling today mean to you?
It means that 50 years of continued prayer works, and God is faithful, and the overturning of Roe v. Wade today is probably some of the most historic legislation overturning this decision that we could ever have. And sending it back to the states is where it should have been all along. And so this is just vindication for all us pro-life, not just representatives, but for the people of America.
Congresswoman, there is a moral and spiritual aspect to this decision for a lot of people, but there's also a legal aspect, and you touched upon it. What does this mean more from the legal standpoint?
It means that now the states will have the right to determine whether or not they want to allow abortion, and it should be up to the people of the state. And I support those representatives who are going to determine whether it's right or wrong and serve the constituents and what the will of the people is. It's all about the will of the people, and the federal government should have nothing to do with that.
Congresswoman, when I touched upon the fact that there's also a spiritual component to this, obviously a lot of pro-life advocates are people of faith. We've seen quite a few pro-life centers, churches being vandalized. Are you concerned that this might happen?
Well, absolutely. It already has. Lawlessness breeds lawlessness, and if you don't stand up and if you don't prosecute these people when they do break the law, they'll just continue to do it because, the chances are great that they won't be incarcerated for what they do. If people want to voice, there's nothing wrong with protesting, but it's called peaceful protesting. It's not called burning a city down, burning a church down, burning a clinic down just because they want to give you the choice to keep your baby. That's not lawful. And so I expect that to happen. I expect people to stand up and voice their opinions that they do not agree with this overturning of this decision. But you know what? God is good, and I'm just optimistic.
Congresswoman, there's a group called Jane's Revenge. It's a leftist group that is vowing violence and to take to the streets. Do you think that leaders on the Democratic side need to come out and strongly voice their, have a strong voice against this?
Yeah. If it's unlawful, call it what it is. Don't sugarcoat it. If they're breaking the law, they're breaking the law. Condemn it. For goodness sakes, if somebody on the right was doing that, I'd certainly say it's wrong. I mean, don't mince words. The American people just want the truth. And if they're doing something that isn't right, call it out.
And so back to the issue at hand, where does the pro-life movement go from here? You're from Tennessee. It's a very red state. What are you hearing from the people in your state?
Well, our state has trigger laws, and, waiting on this decision to come down, and a lot of states probably do have trigger laws that will determine how they set policy, and it will go back to the states where it duly should be, and we'll see what happens. You have to, it goes back to the will of the people. I have full confidence in the representatives of my state that they'll do the right thing.
Congresswoman Diana Harshbarger, thank you.
Hey, my pleasure. It's a great day, and I look forward to what's getting ready to happen. God is good.
The latest ruling has prompted a flurry of responses. Republicans are hailing the decision while Democrats are vowing to continue the fight. More companies are weighing in, announcing they'll cover abortion travel expenses for their employees. Former President Donald Trump praised the decision, calling it, quote, the biggest win for life in a generation. Trump said this is made possible because of 3 conservative justices that he appointed. Former President Barack Obama criticized the Supreme Court for reversing the nearly 50 years of precedent. Obama said abortion should be left to a personal decision. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says this is a victory for the right to life.
This great nation can now live up to its core principle that all are created equal, not born equal, created equal.
While Speaker Pelosi describes this as an insult to women.
It's a slap in the face to women about using their own judgment to make their own decisions about their reproductive freedom.
Abortion bans went into immediate effect in the states of Louisiana, Missouri, Kentucky, and South Dakota. At least 13 states have trigger laws to pose abortion restrictions immediately or soon following the ruling. Meanwhile, Democratic leaders vowed the fight is not over.
And in New York and all over this nation, that fierce resistance will rise.
A number of companies have announced they will cover travel expenses for employees seeking abortions. In recent days, concerns over attacks on our way of government have been raised, whether it be how the Constitution is slowly being chipped away as more laws are passed restricting rights that the framers of the Constitution deemed God-given, or the undermining of decisions made by the judiciary. Some say that this is setting a dangerous tone for our way of government, which ultimately impacts our way of life. Congressman Larry Bucshon of Indiana is a physician and a scholar of the Constitution, and we're happy to have him on to discuss. Congressman Larry Bucshon, thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Congressman, President Biden just called out the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe versus Wade. He called it a tragic error. What is your reaction to that comment?
Well, obviously, I disagree. I think, everybody has a right to their opinion, including the President of the United States. But, our form of government includes 3 branches of government, one of which is the Supreme Court. And, it's their role to adjudicate cases based on the Constitution and the way they evaluate and determine each case and its constitutionality and whether or not it's correct. And they determined that the decision on Roe v. Wade from 1973 was not judged properly, and they overturned it. And they stated that constitutionally, that abortion rights are not there in the U.S. Constitution, and that it should be determined by elected officials, and they determine that should be at the state level. So, the president has the right to his opinion. But the one thing I tell you, I think we have to stop doing is every time we have a decision from the Supreme Court, and I'd say this to Republicans too, that we use derisive, bad terminology as it relates to the court. It's part of our government. It's an independent third branch. And even though we may disagree, we have to respect their decisions.
Congressman, you kind of answered my follow-up question, which is, do comments like this have a damaging effect or undermine our system of government that's in place?
They absolutely do. And, we've seen this happen, honestly, on both sides. Historically, you won't see me do that. I mean, when the decision came down to retain Obamacare, when I first got into Congress, I disagreed with that. I thought the law was not constitutional and wasn't the right direction to go. But you didn't see me, use derisive terms about the court and their decision. They're the third branch of government. They're in the Constitution. And if we want the American people to respect our institutions in this country, whether that's our police, our courts, our school systems, and our government as a whole, we ourselves cannot use this type of rhetoric.
Congressman, Jane's Revenge is a pro-abortion group. They've made some of the following statements. I'm going to read to you quickly here online. They're saying, we're asking you for what you can do to make your anger known. They're also saying, if abortion isn't safe, you aren't either. Are you concerned about domestic terrorism potentially coming from these types of groups, and especially the safety of the Supreme Court justices?
Absolutely. I think the safety of the Supreme Court justices can be at risk, and also legislators, both at the federal and state and local level, if they disagree with this particular group. And statements like that need to be taken seriously by the Justice Department and make sure that they are investigating these groups when they make threatening remarks like this. And I want to reiterate, I would say this if this was coming from the political right. You cannot be making these type of statements. Our country is on edge right now for economic reasons. Gas prices are very high, inflation's up, cost of living is way up, people are nervous. And so this inflammatory rhetoric is inappropriate and honestly should be investigated by the Justice Department.
And Congressman, lastly, before I let you go, just the constitutionality of this ruling. There's a lot of emotion kind of mixed in. As a lawmaker, can you just kind of explain what this actually means?
Well, what they determined is that constitutionally, the right to an abortion is not in the Constitution, and isn't one of the fundamental rights granted to the American people in the U.S. Constitution. It hasn't been in an amendment to the Constitution. And so I think this is a victory for the originalist view of the Constitution. And that's what's been determined. And so what they have said is there's no constitutional reason why state legislatures can't make decisions based on their own views of whether or not abortion should be legal, limited, or completely legal altogether. And that's basically what this does. It just basically says, from an originalist perspective, the right to an abortion is not in the Constitution.
Congressman Larry Bucshon, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.